Yeah, and it feels like in some ways we are becoming more sex positive as a society. Obviously, there's a lot of political pushback, but we are seeing better representation. We have in recent years seen some expansion of rights for folks who are gender diverse. I mean, a lot of evangelicals have called for an end to purity culture. And there's a lot of literature online from evangelicals talking about how to heal from some of these things. Large figures like Joshua Harris and Rob Bell have distanced themselves from their former work. Is it at all accurate to say that purity culture is like dead or dying? Is this, Alice's pendulum swinging, or is it just taking on a new face? What do y'all think?
Hmm. I think that it's probably taking on a new face.
Mm,
From I don't tend to linger long in present day evangelical circles, but every now and then I come across them, and I've seen a lot of people who are still Christians trying to rebrand purity culture essentially. And make it sexy. The girls can wear makeup now,
yeah.
they could wear two-piece swimsuits, but there's still an element of definitely sex should still be had in marriage, and it should be a heterosexual one man one woman marriage.
Right.
So I think that it's undergoing a rebranding, but I also think that, to my observation, anytime one movement, let's just call it the more liberal sexual movement, gets a little headway, the prudish religious sexual
Hmm.
movement will react, and vice versa. So I think that, I don't know, to my observation, and this is just how what I think in my head. I just think we're always just reacting in states of reaction. Um, and every now and then, maybe there's someone with like a truly original, pioneering vision, whatever that vision is, but it's I don't know. I'm totally open to being wrong and hearing other takes, but that's just what it looks like to me. It just looks like a perpetual state of reactiveness, and it just aesthetically looks different depending on the time and culture. Um, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if I were to have a kid by the time they were a teenager that they're embarrassed by my generation, the millennial generation's sexual openness and freedom, and that they want to be a little bit more buttoned up, and modesty is in. You see it already. Like, I'm baffled by, again, not to bring it back to women's fashion. I really don't spend that much time thinking about it, guys, but I do think that fashion is an indicator of our value systems. And on one hand, we've never seen women's fashion be so skimpy, influenced by shows like Euphoria. Um, at the same time, I don't know if I've ever been to to like shopping centers lately and seen more modest, prairie inspired, boho chic, like a little housewife on the prairie sort of aesthetic. It's very covered up. And I think that it's interesting to see these two trends taking off in tandem. And I do think that I, again, would just trace it to just the reactiveness of these two um, cultures kind of having perpetual face offs.
Yeah, I mean, I get that notion that we're destined to have this back and forth forever, but with social media and really just widespread data being readily available, it does feel a little schizophrenic right now. I mean, is that fair to
Mm-hmm.
say?
I think so.
If I can jump in, I think some of what we're seeing is the church is changing because if it does not evolve, it will become culturally irrelevant.
Hmm.
I'm reminded this is somewhat related, but it took the Catholic Church like 2,000 years. I think it was like 1982 when John Paul II finally came forward and said, we, the church, accept the science of evolution. And I thought, well, yeah, you're a little late to that party, for a bastion of truth with a capital T. But what had happened was the overwhelming avalanche of evolution demonstrating or evidence demonstrating the fact of evolution became impossible to ignore. So then the church is a laughing stock.
Mm-hmm.
It everything that they do is their credibility dies unless they adapt to this new reality. And I think what we see is there was a Pew Research poll that came out just last week that estimated that at the current levels, what we're seeing now, the rise and the fall of the nuns and the evangelicals, respectively, we may see a nation, the United States, which has a majority of non religious, not atheist, but not identifying as religious. We may see that as a statistical majority in population by the year 2035. Now, if you're in a fundy church, you can either batten down the hatches and say, fundamental Bible, heaven, hell, black and white letter of the law, which some churches are doing. Or if you really want to survive and be relevant in the culture, you adapt and you soften and you sort of push aside those verses that talk about how gays need to be stoned and adulteresses need to be executed, etc. And you maybe allow people to come in, and you've got LGBT people in the clergy, and we're a church of love and we worship Jesus. It's not a religion, it's a relationship. And that's why more and more of these sort of life church type churches, the Joel Osteen type churches, the mega churches, a lot of the pastors we talked about, I think you mentioned Rob Bell and a few others, have thrown out some fundamentals of the Bible. Hell theology, that's out. Judging gay people, that's out. Minimizing and subjugating and silencing women, that's out. And they've custom fitted, they've evolved their Christianity to remain culturally relevant. Otherwise, it will become obsolete and discarded. And I think this has been a necessary, perhaps even a strategic evolution of the church into something else, so that the culture itself doesn't just kick it to the curb.
Yeah, no, I'm
There's
definitely seeing that. I mean, I'll just real quickly say that since joining the Atheist Community of Austin, I have been asked by two different Christian organizations to sit on their board because they want some, atheist representative so that they can continue to draw in queer members. I have very complicated thoughts about that, but I definitely see that desire to reinterpret some of those more challenging verses.
And I'm
But
not so
Alice,
cynical, if I may, to say that everybody who like Pastor John Pavlovitz, he's a pastor, but he loves people and he's pro LGBT and he's pro state church separation and he's a humanist. Actually, he and I have so much in common as humanists. I think a lot of people are making this evolution because sincerely they don't want to judge people. They want to love people. And that comes from a very sincere, organic place in their minds and hearts. And I think to be fair, we have to say that because the cynic says, come on, they're all playing us. But I really think a lot of people have adjusted or custom fashioned a religion that more sort of fits their innate moral compass. And I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, what do you see for, I don't know, whatever this incarnation of purity culture will turn into? What do you imagine being the next 5 or 10 years in this narrative?
Oh, God.
I know it's hard to speculate on.
Sure.
I think it is interesting when what you just shared, Christy, fascinates me that you as an atheist have been asked to sit on the board of. Did you say churches, Christian churches?
Yeah, one church and then one, I don't know, loose Christian organization, both of which were very quick to point out that actually in the ancient whatever, that verse doesn't mean to stone gay people, which, I know that there's some valid takes in that direction, but I really sincerely don't care. Anyway.
Yes, I don't either. My patience is very tried when it gets to apologetics and when it gets to progressive Christianity, because I just know about myself. I have a very low threshold of patience for it. It activates my nervous system very
Sure.
quickly. And it's difficult for me to understand. But that said, and I'm friends with some progressive Christians, what I am encouraged by is kind of like what I was saying earlier. I don't think belief systems are going to go away anytime soon, unfortunately. I don't think superstition's on the verge of becoming obsolete. But I think as long as we are going to have faith-based systems and social glue, I'd rather they be more inclusive. I'd rather they focus more on the loving parts than the hateful, angry, fearful parts. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Bible undergo a massive re-editing. I don't know about within the next 5 to 10 years, but maybe within our lifetime, where we'll see like a new version. There's so many versions of the Bible, and I think I'm not sure if in my lifetime there's been a latest version to come out. I think of the Message. I remember that
Mm,
was like the heretic
yeah.
Bible, which of course I loved.
Yeah.
But that's the most recent one that's coming to mind right now. There might be others that are more recent, but it wouldn't surprise me to see a newly edited version of the Holy NIV Bible that would no longer be the NIV Bible. It would be a very highly edited version of that with a lot of parts cut out, and it will cause shockwaves.
Mm.
Maybe for a very long time, but eventually I could see that becoming the new face of Christianity, and the things that we have today and in earlier parts of our lifetime will be looked back on as like, oh yeah, we don't stone gays or women or rape victims anymore. Like that's the old part of the Bible that we just, that was for back then. I think a
Right.
lot of things that are going on today are going to be looked at as that was for back then. That's what I can hope. Of course, it would be my personal wish to just see all superstitious based belief systems go away, so we can actually live here now more and enjoy so much more now. But I just also understand and genuinely feel compassionate toward people who just cannot bear not knowing. So
Mm,
they have to
mhm.
believe in something, and they can't live in that state of mystery and unknowing. And so it's like, all right, as long as there's going to be the majority of people who feel that way, who are going to form clubs around it to come up with shared ideas of why we're here and where we're going and what we have to do to get there. Even though I don't care to linger in progressive Christian spaces, I support what they're trying to do as long as they're going to be there anyway. Yeah, like I support you making them more love based than fear driven, and certainly not weaponizing shame to keep it. I want them to pay taxes.
Yeah, fair.
I want them to pay taxes, absolutely. But if they did pay taxes, I could support social clubs that are based off of shared beliefs that were more love based. I could do that with a little bit more integrity, I feel,
Hmm.
than I
You
have
want to
right
talk
now.
about cherry picking? There was
Mhm.
actually a Queen James Bible, not the King James. It's a Queen James Bible, and all of the anti-gay verses have just been removed. Like somebody just went in and they just took them out.
Made a
And
Oh,
now
Bible
you
God,
for
have a
queens. I
now
see.
you
that's
have a
really cool.
Bible that is not anti-gay. What a great example of people who have custom fashioned a religion that is more suited to their own moral compass.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I see that a lot of the high control religions, maybe they're about passing the plate to the tune of 10%. Maybe they're about controlling people. Maybe it's dominionism. I've seen that. Alice has seen that.
Sure.
Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel, baptizing them, blah, blah, blah. We are a Christian nation. We're supposed to sort of conquer the planet for Jesus. That exists. But I see, and we've been doing a lot of shows recently about the psychology of belief, why people are attracted to ritual. And so
Mm.
many of the things that the church has been doing for so long and so well, right? You get together, you've got structure, you've got this happening after this, you've got communal music, which is a bonding moment. You
Mhm.
get the endorphins, which is a bonding agent. It connects you. You've got people to check on you when you aren't there, childcare for your children, a social aspect, someone to visit you in the hospital. And back to the rituals, I think it was in the Jewish communities, even those who practice Judaism, roughly 50% of Jews today say that they either don't believe in a God or they have some doubts about the existence of God, but they
Sure.
still identify as Jews. Why? Because it is the ritual and the structure of the religion that sort of provides a frame for the portrait of their lives. I get that.
Mm.
I don't think we need to lie to ourselves about gods and monsters in order to have those things. I think we can have ritual and color and culture and music and structure and chants, and you can do whatever you want to do. I think we can have all this really cool stuff that the church has done well without having this interesting aspects of them. And so I think we may see more of that in the days and the years to come. I certainly hope so.
I mean, I certainly agree, but I also know as a therapist that I can talk to people about the what we understand of the neurobiology, for instance, of communal singing or of mantras, mindfulness, comparing meditation to prayer, and all of these sorts of things, and help people find the the power inherent in those practices without letting them be tied to all of the bullshit and all of the folklore. But a lot of times people do seem to need a uniting myth in order to find community. And I wonder if the atheist community is really prepared to offer a substitute to the church, or where we might look for some of these things.
Well, I think there are strong evolutionary reasons for this sort of desire for the higher power, the parental figure, the master mover, the prime mover kind of a thing.
Mhm.
I was talking to, he's a neurobiologist, John Wathy. He's got a new book coming out called Phantom God. But he has written a book called The Myth of God's Presence, or something, The Illusion of God's Presence, and how evolution, our own evolution, plays into this sort of what seems to be a natural human desire to look up and see something bigger than ourselves. And I think, once we understand that the mind is doing that, then it allows us to take greater control over how we react. If I understand, well, this is actually part of my biology, this is going on, well, what's that about? You can deconstruct it and maneuver and sort of get rid of all the bad stuff, all the baggage, and you can sort of develop a framework for your own portrait that fits you.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, we've got a call on the line that I think speaks very well to that point. So I'm going to cue that up in just a second. Before I do that, Alice, did you have anything you wanted to say before we take a peek at what's been going on around the rest of the ACA?
Real quick, one idea I have of something that I think the atheist community could, and there's probably a lot of atheists who do support this more, but I think that we're about to see a huge psycho-spiritual renaissance due to psychedelics becoming legalized. And I think that the more atheists who can be more open about their experiences with psychedelics, that could be something that I think we could boost as an alternative to faith-based transcendence or wonder or awe or transformative healing. It could just be biology-based, because when you can understand what's going on in the brain and you can see it, and you can have it you can have these things experientially for yourself without any faith required. I think that that's something that's an area that I would like to be more publicly vocal about. I find it very fascinating that there's a lot of atheists who convert to belief after a psychedelic experience, but I would bet that a lot of them were either lifelong agnostics or atheists, and I'm curious to see more atheists who did grow up in a religion talking about their psychedelic experiences as a way of contrast. But yeah, I think that we are about to see a huge wave of new religious movements and hopefully new atheist communities spring up out of this psychedelic renaissance.
I think that there is absolutely the opportunity for that. I know that for myself, the last nail in the coffin in interpreting and understanding those faith-based experiences that I had was a study of hypnosis and recognizing how you can intentionally create these transcendent experiences. And with the research we're seeing into psychedelics right now, I think that could be a really interesting tipping point.